Ryan. Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. Let's start with this, okay? Oklahoma hired another basketball coach over the weekend, and Joe C. yesterday introduced Jenny Baranczyk. Ryan was in attendance at the press conference again. He asked a question again. I think it was the final question. Good question, I thought. Solid answer. And he's got some insight on the new coach for you coming up. But first, Ryan, your second live in-person press conference in a week. You going to be okay?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's 2 in 2 weeks. I'm kind of starting to get used to it. Look, our friends at Zoom, they've done a lot of stuff for everyone around the world over this last year, but I think I'm about ready to never boot up a Zoom call ever again.
I think I might actually miss the Zoom calls. We'll have to wait and see. That's Ryan Chapman. He's in Norman. I'm John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening to the SI Sooners podcast, and thanks for watching on my YouTube channel. This is episode 55, by the way. We are rolling right along. We love the double nickels here at SI Sooners. SI Sooners is a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network, SI Sooners. Our website is allsooners.com. Check that out if you want the latest, the greatest Sooner coverage. Growing kind of like a weed, you might say. We'll see. Ryan, man, I thought the most amazing thing that Jenny Baranczyk brings to Oklahoma as the new women's basketball coach is that 3-year stretch at Drake where she went 53-1 in conference play. What? That's just sick. The lady obviously knows the game. I think she's a proven sideline coach. She knows what she's doing in the game of basketball, right? But she seems like, just judging from her presentation yesterday and what little video we've seen of her so far, she seems like she can really coach up young women, inspire them to play hard, sacrifice for the team, all that good stuff. And she's coming to a program where Sherry Cole was winning games last year with 6 players on the roster, 6 players available to her, I should say. And so, if she gets some of those best players to come back next year and is able to bring in some frontline talent, Ryan, maybe Oklahoma can enjoy a quick turnaround in women's basketball.
Yeah, for sure, John. And look, whatever your opinion is of what the OU women's basketball program has been over the last 3 or 4 years, you cannot deny the fact that there has been talent that's come into the program, and then it's high-level talent, too. Talent that's played in a national championship game, as Pelton did for Arizona. Like, that talent's been in the program and then left. So if Baranczyk can keep those talented level of players continuing to come in, keep them engaged and wanting to hang around in Norman and play together, then you could see a renaissance of Oklahoma basketball. And here's the thing. What you've got with both the men's and the women's coach now in Porter Moser and Jenny Baranczyk is 2 coaches that not only have proven that they can do it, and they're trying to take that next step and prove they can do it in the Big 12 stage, but they're 2 coaches that, at least on paper, as advertised, will put out a very exciting product. They both want to get out and run. Jenny Baranczyk talked about, we know the numbers about her high-scoring offenses, but basically she was just saying she wants to breathe that love and passion for basketball and for playing together. And if your team is in that place, John, if they're passionate about going out and playing together, then it's no worries for them to dive out on the floor, to get out and transition, get out and run. So it could be a wave of, there's the potential for OU basketball to have a resurgence and for it to be a very exciting and entertaining product, which I think is exactly what Joe Castiglione's looking to do in bringing in a new women's coach and trying to fill the Lloyd Noble Center.
Yeah, you nailed it. 10 years of Lon Kruger, 25 years of Sherry Cole. I think it's fair to say everybody around here is excited to see what the next chapter of basketball looks like at the Lloyd Noble Center. Hey, we got to get into some college football recruiting. We have been breaking out, if you guys have been on our website, allsooners.com, you've seen that we've been breaking out our interviews and our highlight videos from the, summer 7-on-7s and the spring 7-on-7 and the camps and stuff that we've attended over the last few weeks. Whether it's right up the street from me in Broken Arrow or down in Dallas, or Ryan almost went to Houston once. That got kind of canceled at the last second. Anyway, I had a couple of cool pieces on some area wide receivers. One is a kid that Oklahoma State has offered in both football and baseball, Morgan Pearson from Plainview, Oklahoma. OU hasn't offered him yet, but I think the Sooners have had some success, if I remember right, if my memory serves, with guys who have played 2 sports in football and baseball over the years. Can't quite recall the kid's name or the cover. Anyway, I'm kidding, of course. Anyway, I also did a piece on Ashton Cozart, who Ashton just got an offer from Texas and Florida. pretty good. He's from North Richland Hills, which is near Dallas. He's coming on fast. He is one of those fast risers. Both of those guys are in the 2023 class, and both of them told me that they would be very interested in an offer from OU. Now, Ryan is going to be in Dallas this weekend for a couple of events. One is the Elite 11 on Sunday. I don't think Oklahoma's in the market for a quarterback right away. Not in this area anyway, but we're going to roll out all that content in the next few weeks. Ryan, you have shot video. You have interviewed a handful of kids like myself. You've gotten your feet wet, like myself, in the world of summer recruiting, camps, 7-on-7s, all this stuff. Who do you have your eye on for Oklahoma in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so first off, I think that those pass catchers, they're just easy to catch your eye, John, and especially at an event like the Elite 11 that we're headed to. If you're not looking at quarterbacks, well, John, they got to have someone to throw the ball to, and those guys would be DeSoto, Texas's Jonte Cook. He's a 2023 wide receiver, and look, I can't tell you how impressed I've been, and it seems that I'm not the only one who's been just very impressed with what he's doing, as well as his cohort in 2023, a guy right down the road from you, Luke Haas. This guy, he keeps getting more and more offers rolling in. He is officially committed to play in the Under Armour All-American game, and this is talent that is homegrown, John, right in your backyard over there. And so those are two guys that continue to impress, and we know about those guys. But you're looking at Jaden Hale. He's someone that debuts in the top 10 of the 2023 rankings for Rivals. And look, not only have we seen and been impressed, but the Oklahoma coaching staff too. If you go to allsooners.com, we've got a great story on the marching orders that some of the Sooner commits, Talon Shetron, Jason Noel, and they've had as the camp circuit heats up, as the 7-on-7s get going here through the spring and the summer, John.
Yeah, now Malachi Nelson appears to be Lincoln Riley's next great quarterback, right? He's certainly got some options for sure, but it's starting to feel like he is leaning toward OU. Not a surprise there if he picks the Sooners. I think they're on that every other year, get the top quarterback in the country to come in. It's a pretty good problem to have, right? Caleb Williams is the 2021 guy. Can't wait to see what he looks like next week in the spring game. But Malachi Nelson, the top guy in the 2023 class, and he's not going to be at the Elite 11 in Dallas on Sunday. Wah, wah. I know he's a California kid, right? What would he be doing there? But Ryan, fans are waiting. OU fans are waiting for the next commitment news. My guess is it's not going to be coming until after Champ U Barbecue in mid-June, Ryan, because guys are scheduling their official visits, unofficial visits, all of them. And we're expecting, I don't think it popped before we started the podcast. It might be coming out right now, right this very second. But we're expecting big news out of the NCAA today. We're expecting the dreaded dead period that has been in place since last March. We're expecting that it will be lifted after May 31st. After 15 months of no actual recruiting. Remember, they put it in place on March 13th, right after they killed the tournament. And then they extended it 8 times, Ryan. It's just another sign that things are getting back to normal, and recruiting is where it all starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And the unfortunate thing is, John, it's just not going to be in time for the spring game, which that's what Lincoln Riley, when he took over the recruiting calendar, he saw that spring game as an opportunity to bring a ton of guys in. Since it's an actual scrimmage, game day-like atmosphere, you can show off the campus, show off what a game day can be in the spring, and that's just not going to happen. So the eyeballs on the Champ U Barbecue this summer are going to be even bigger, and we have a day for that. We have the weekend, as you started to see leak out on Twitter, and if you go to allsooners.com, we've recapped all of that. June 18th through the 20th. That weekend appears to be the big one. You've already seen linebacker Ish Harris. You've seen Jaden Rowe out of Oklahoma. You've seen Jake Taylor from Bishop Gorman. He's coming on in. It's like the list keeps on growing, and we know that if you can't have the spring game, then you're going to have to turn to that next big event. And what better time than something like the Champ U Barbecue where you get everyone there together, John? You start getting some of your recruits. Like, you're going to be trying to recruit these guys from all sides. And we've seen it's been a very successful strategy for Oklahoma, and it's paid dividends in the past. And it's only going to be even more important this year as the first big event once we return to some sort of recruiting normalcy.
You know, man, the NCAA had better not screw this up. It's Ryan, it's been amazing that so many kids over the past year or so have made what, college recruiters used to call, what the kids are told now, is a 40-year decision. You're not making a 4-year decision. You're making a 40-year decision. You know, you're not only your sports career, but your degree, the network that you create in college, the things that last you a lifetime. A lot of people meet their spouse in college. I certainly did. But they've made that, these kids nowadays, this past year or so, 15 months, have made that 40-year decision, some of them, many of them, without ever even stepping on campus or meeting the coaching staff. It's incredible. And I say that, of course, it's a 40-year decision for some people, at least. It's turned into a 4-month decision where you enroll, you play, and you transfer. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we got to break down some of the more interesting position battles in spring practice. Hey, listen up. Spring is here, but you know the seasons in Oklahoma. Hot one day, cold the next. That's a lot of work for your heating and air unit, but the guys at Trade Pros got you covered. Sign up for one of their no-hassle service plans. They'll come out twice a year and tune up your AC and your furnace, and you get priority scheduling and discounts. Just call Chris at Trade Pros, 405-316-0598. That's 405-316-0598. Or go to TradeProsOKC.com. Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman or a car dealership in Oklahoma City or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day. And the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at all_Sooners. Social media time. Follow SI Sooners on Twitter at all_Sooners. Find Ryan at Radios Ryan. I'm at John E. Hoover on Twitter. Our website, allsooners.com. As I said before, we are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network, and you can always find the video version of this podcast on my YouTube channel. That's John Hoover Media, and you know me. I'm going to keep asking for your help here until we get there, and we're close. We're almost to the finish line. If you're on that original channel, I need you to please subscribe to my new channel right here. That's where all my content is going to be posted eventually. This channel will be gonzo, so jump over there now before, before Godzilla and King Kong get fighting again. I don't know. Ryan, let's jump into some position battles at spring football practice. Man, it's been interesting. We've said over the past couple of podcasts, I think, that running back is going to be a good battle, right? Offensive tackle is going to be a good battle. I think they'll still hold up, although we kind of found out a couple of weeks ago or a week ago or so, whatever it was, that Stacey Wilkins has been dinged up a little bit, so he's not had a full shot at being able to show out, so to speak. But yeah, Kennedy Brooks, on the surface, he comes back from opting out last year. He looks like the easy front runner at running back, but man, we got to talk to Eric Gray last week. Does he not just feel like someone who could jump in there and be a feature back?
Yeah, and he obviously has that versatility, that skill. But John, when I'm listening through, there was one specific trigger keyword that came up when talking about Eric Gray that gives me a little bit of pause. And that is when DeMarco Murray specifically said the one thing that Eric Gray has to work on is his pass blocking. So that's one thing that tells me Eric Gray is not there yet to compete as an every single down back, because we know that Lincoln Riley, he requires the highest level out of everyone in every facet of the game in this offense. So if Eric Gray's not up to speed on the pass blocking portion, then that's just going to limit the number of times he's on the field. So while he may be incredibly productive while he's out there, he's just not going to get as many shots. Now, John, we still have a ton of time between now and when the Sooners roll out in New Orleans against Tulane. By all accounts, DeMarco Murray in that same breath said he's coming along really well. Eric Gray went into the fact that Kennedy Brooks is helping him, DeMarco Murray's helping him. It's something they're working on every day. But for me, that was the one thing that told me is, as all the good we're hearing about Eric Gray, I might want to pump the brakes on having a true battle as far as the starting running back goes, because we know Kennedy Brooks takes care of all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was one buzzword that Eric Gray himself used that caught my ears, which was he patterns his game after Barry Sanders. I was like, gah? Really? So that could be interesting.
Don't say that here.
Put the guy in the backfield, give him the football, and let's see what happens. I think at offensive tackle, I still think, this is me talking here, not the coaches, I still think Wanya Morris is going to lock things down at left tackle, but the complication there is obviously you've got a 2-year starter coming back in Eric Swenson. Now, Eric Swenson physically maybe more limited than Wanya Morris, but way more experienced in the Big 12 for sure, and knows how to play in this offense, knows all the checks and everything that goes into playing in this offense. So that could get interesting. My guess is, again, I'm guessing, this is just me, Swenson shifts over to right tackle, which he has done before. Remember last year or year before, whatever it was, he did it briefly. And then you'll see Anton Harrison and Stacey Wilkins settling in as the backups and maybe even rotating in there, Ryan.
Yeah, that I totally agree that Wanya Morris will be your opening day starter at left tackle. I think if you're looking for the highest ceiling across this offensive line, I think if you're an OU fan, you'll want to see Wanya Morris and Harrison out on the left and the right. Now, will that happen? I don't know, because like you said, John, it's impossible to replace that kind of experience. So if you're rolling out with Wanya Morris and Swenson, you've got two guys that have been 2-year starters at position. Morris, albeit at Tennessee, playing in the SEC, but you'll have two guys with 2 years of that starting experience, and I think that's the kind of safety valve that any quarterback would rest easy knowing that you've got there. So I think you're going to have good competition. We know that Bill Beanbo also is not afraid to get all the way into, the Texas game and then change things up and roll with that. So I do truly think that if there are injuries, unless someone just goes out there and is making the job their own every single snap, once we get into the season this fall, I think you'll see rotate through a bunch of combinations so that by the midway point of the season, your best 5 offensive linemen are out on the field.
I think we've talked about defensive back here on the podcast. When you've done 55 podcasts, you start to lose count a little bit. But I'm telling you, man, corner is really interesting. I'm calling, again, just me here, not on the depth chart. The coaches haven't given us any insight, but I'm just calling DJ Graham and Woody Washington as the starters with Jaden Davis and Joshua Eaton is my guess as the backups. I think what you're probably going to see is Justin Harrington probably, in my opinion, move back to safety, possibly nickel. But yeah, then if he moves to safety, then you've got Turner Yell and Pat Fields. Those guys might need to have their heads on a swivel for Justin Harrington. And then what do you do with Key Lawrence from Tennessee? He's still got to learn, obviously, Grinch's speed D, right? But he's so talented. You could just tell by watching him, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, his high school film, whatever. So Key Lawrence, nickel possibly, somebody other than, somebody who looks really good or somebody who has played a lot, right, is going to have to sit at some point.
Well, John, you talk about what do you do? I'll tell you what you do. You rotate, because Alex Grinch, Roy Manning, we know, and if you've heard it once, you've heard it 1,000 times, they want to rotate. The exception to that rule, while Grinch has been in Norman, has been the safety spot. Pat Fields and Delarian Turner-Yell have consistently logged the most snaps across the season for that defense in the last 2 years because they don't have anyone else that the coaching staff has really been that confident in, John, up until perhaps this season, that they could rotate in consistently, really split those snaps 50-50, 60-40, whatever you feel like, and you feel that the play is not going to drop. So, John, whoever's the starter in name, I don't know if that's going to matter as much, because if you're that coaching staff, what they live by, what they preach by is that rotation, having 22 guys they're confident in. You could be looking at the first season for Alex Grinch and Roy Manning where they truly have that at the safety spot. So I think all of those names you mentioned, we're going to see a lot of them because we just haven't seen that kind of rotation at the safety yet. And I think that's where Alex Grinch and Roy Manning want to get this defense going into 2021.
That is a great point. 2 years ago, Alex Grinch kept saying, man, we're looking for more candidates. We're looking for more safeties. We're trying to get guys to stand out at practice, and nobody would. So, maybe he's got that depth now to where he doesn't have to look so hard. People present themselves for playing time. I think that's a possibility for sure. Ryan, I think my favorite position battle this spring, get this, is at inside linebacker, where there are 2 returning starters back. Right? I mean, we got to talk to Brian Odom last week, and he could not stop talking about his linebackers all of his linebackers. He said he's got 9 guys in his room, and I think he mentioned 15. But no, seriously, the competition there is ridiculous, just ridiculous. And he's got both of his returning starters back in that competition is amazing.
Yeah, John, this is the one that I look at and I say, if I'm the coach, I don't know what I'm doing. So you just roll down. You got Deshaun White, you got Brian Asamoah, you got David Ugwoegbu. Those were the 3 guys that were really getting a ton of run. 2 of those 3 getting that rotation going. Okay, oh, by the way, Caleb Kelly comes back. One of those initial 5 stars that you had on that defense left from the old regime. He's coming back in off of injury again. The things we're hearing about Shane Witter and just his flat-out speed and the way that he's coming along. He got on the field in the Cotton Bowl. Like, if you pick 2 of those 5 guys, I don't think anyone's going to be too mad about it. So if I were going just based off of who I thought was playing the best at the end of the season last year, the first pairing I'd give a shot at is Asamoah and David Ugwoegbu. That gives you everything you want, that just top-end athleticism, that size that you want at the position, the ability to cover sideline to sideline, all of that stuff. I would start with Asamoah and Ugwoegbu and go from there. But again, like we said, he has so many options, Brian Odom does, that I think the combinations you'll see will be plentiful this season.
Yeah, with Deshaun and Brian Asamoah out there, and David Ugwoegbu, I think, is, like you said, right there with those guys. He's made starts at both the Mike and the Will. We've talked about him in the past. His ceiling is so freaking high. But the guy I want to get into right now, Shane Witter, we've heard the last couple of weeks that he might be, seriously, the fastest player on the roster. On the roster! What? Yeah, a linebacker? That's what the kids are saying. So the kid is talented. He's picking up the defense, I guess, eventually. Little by little. It's pretty complex, but he's just got to get out there and play. He looks a little small for the linebacker position. He's 6 foot 218, but he's not small, right? So if you're talking about a linebacker, though, and you're at a place like Oklahoma, and your teammates are saying that you're one of the fastest 2 or 3 guys on the team, where do you put somebody like that? Do you create a new position like a nickel-Sam hybrid?
When's the last time we saw a linebacker returning kicks, John? That's what we want to. That's what you want to know. If you want speed out there, no. But yeah, it's one of those interesting things. You have to wonder if maybe that outside rush linebacker, mix him in and let him play as a hybrid, where when he's on the field, you don't necessarily know if he's going to line up inside, if you want to slot him outside, kind of like with Kenneth Murray, what they did, moving him around a little bit, letting him utilize that pass rushing ability, and then obviously be that stalwart in the middle. It just makes you think, if you've got a guy like that, it's going to be contingent on John, how much of the defense he's able to pick up, not just for the inside linebacker, but the entire defense. If he's able to mentally make that leap, you're going to open a bunch of doors, like you said, for a lot of creative looks and creative things that you can throw out there with him to try and confuse opposing quarterbacks. And that's the thing that we've talked when we have Jim Mora Jr. on, and he's talked about Alex Grinch and how creative he gets and how that's a pain for offensive coordinators to deal with. Alex Grinch has been that at Washington State, where you don't have this caliber of athlete. If he can start to really dig in at Oklahoma and really get those wheels turning, you could be talking about a Lincoln Riley-esque impact on the defensive side of the football with the different things he's able to do with all the great athletes that he's recruited.
Yeah, you might be seeing a lot of situational type players. You've got really 4 guys, 4 positions up front. You've got 4 potential linebacker positions, and you've got 5 defensive backs. They don't let you play with 13, though, so that's going to be interesting. Ryan, what did you think of Marcus Stripling's switch from defensive end to rush linebacker? You've got Nick Bonito, who's an All-American there, so Stripling's not going to take his job, but John Michael Terry got over 300 snaps last year. It sounds like the coaches are doing everything in their power to get Stripling at this point on the field and maybe aiming him at being a starter in 2022.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, too, when you hear the quote about Nick Bonito from the coaching staff, that he's a guy who understands and knows his limits. To me, that's a guy that's saying, I understand what I can be at the top end rushing the passer, but I cannot be that if I'm logging 80 snaps. So Stripling coming in, it's been documented. He was asked about it. His struggles just fighting through the nutrition. He's just not a huge 260, 265 pound guy. He's kind of struggled to keep that weight on. Well, sliding him out just still doing some pass rushing stuff, still kind of the same skill set, just as an outside linebacker. Yes, you're going to have to drop into coverage. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that, but it sounds like if he can manage that, he's in a much better spot as far as he can play a little bit lighter. He's not having to be so stressed about all of the nutrition that goes into packing on all that weight and maintaining it with the workload that you put on your body during a football season. It could be a great move for him. And hey, John, like Jamar Cain opened the door that, look, he can always slide right back over to the defensive ends if he has to. So if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the road by any means.
And now Clayton Smith is another guy kind of at that spot. He's a true freshman, so you really don't expect him to jump in there right away, right? Not with all the talent that's on this roster, but boy, man, his skill level is unbelievable. He'll play this year. He's going to make some big plays at some point. But does he become the third rush linebacker? Does Isaiah Thomas slide back inside? Does Clayton Smith then go over to defensive end, right? Because how often do you want to do that with guys like, slide in IT when you've got guys like Jalen Redmond and LaRon Stokes and Perion Winfrey and a couple of others in there? It's going to be interesting to watch how that one unfolds. D-line, rush linebacker, the nose to end, the nose to tackle, the tackle to end. Alex Grinch has got more choices than he's ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just the testament, like we said. That's the shocking part of what's happened with this defense over the past couple of years. Because if you told me a new defensive coordinator comes in, he kind of brings his guy in, and Oklahoma raises the ceiling of that defense, raises the level, he gets 11 guys. Of all the athletes OU has on the defensive side of the football, he gets 11 guys to play at a very good to almost elite level. I would say, wow, that guy's done a really good job. The shocking part is that when he came in and started preaching about having 22 guys, you start going down that defensive line, John. He truly, Alex Grinch does, has a two deep. You're talking about this year. Okay, Jalen Redmond or LaRon Stokes. You feel great both sides. Isaiah Thomas. Okay, if you don't need him, you've got a Jordan Kelly. You've got a Joshua Ellison that can back up Perion Winfrey, and that's just along the line. That's what was so good last year, is they could just platoon guys in and dominate over the entire course of a game. And that's just to build that kind of depth in just 2 seasons and a spring. Like, it's mind-boggling the job that Alex Grinch has done. And that's why, due to success, due to it being a great thing, it's hard to envision him on the sidelines in Norman for much longer outside of this season, and maybe one more.
So, we've gotten to talk to Kennedy Brooks and Jalen Redmond, both 2 of the 3 guys who opted out last year, which is a great big shout out to Lincoln Riley for letting us talk to those guys, because their stories are interesting. So that's huge. But Redmond, man, Ryan, he missed 2018 with blood clots. He comes back. He plays great, gets himself right, and then he decides he needs to sit out 2020 for COVID. Now, I totally get why he chose to do that, but for somebody with that, a situation, a seriously scary health situation, staying away from COVID makes a lot of sense. But that's like 2 major setbacks to a very promising football player. And then as far as the defensive line goes, this might sound stupid at first, but stick with me for a second. The D-line problem, right, is kind of like the problem that Patty Gasso has on the softball team. You legit have to have a batting order. You have to have a certain number of players out there. You can only have so many players out there at one time. Which ones do you pick? She's struggled with it all year. She's like, do I put this player here? Do I set him on the bench? That's a good situation to have out of your personnel when you've got so many players who can play, and that's what's going on with the Oklahoma defensive line. You literally can't make a bad decision. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, Sooners got a new arrival through the transfer portal. Guys, spring has sprung, and you know what that means. Lawn mowers, weed whackers. Listen, if you got weeds sprouting up everywhere, then Manscaped has just what you need. They are the industry leader in men's grooming products, both below the waist and wherever you find those unwanted weeds. And we're going to tell you how to get 20% off your entire order coming right up.
Yeah, John, when you're mowing lawns, why not roll with the Lawn Mower 3.0? We've told you about the ceramic blade. We've told you about the skin-safe technology so that you're not having to cause any ruts or divots in your yard there. And man, it's waterproof, John. It just rolls seamlessly, and it has even a little LED light so you can get that precise edging and landscaping for all of your needs. So the Lawn Mower 3.0 is definitely the way to go this spring.
You guys just remember Manscaped makes a great gift. I have ordered some for the men in my family. I mean, Father's Day now is right around the corner. So, just saying. And the SI Sooners podcast listeners, they get a 20% off and free shipping. All you got to do is use the promo code SOON. That's SOON. You know how to type that in. SOON is the promo code. Manscaped. Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. So OU landed a new player from the transfer portal on Tuesday. Hope you guys saw this news. If you were on allsooners.com, I'm sure you saw it. His name is Josh Plaster. He played the last 2 years at Arizona State. He hails from Flower Mound, Texas in the Metroplex, and he is a kicker and a punter, mostly. I think most of his history is as a kickoff guy, but he punts as well. So what the heck does OU need with a specialist, right? With Gabe Burkich back at kicker and Reeves Munshaw back at punter. Is that a serious question? Lincoln Riley, I'm telling you guys, he knows he's got a legit chance to play for a national championship this year. And he knows that in 2020, punter might have been the team's weakest position. I'm not trying to knock Reeves Munshaw here. You guys know I don't bag on college kids, but the fact of the matter is that he only averaged 39.1 yards per punt last season. That ranked 8th in the Big 12 Conference in 2020. So, yeah, you got a guy that's punted before, right? You got a guy that's kicked before, right? But from Lincoln Riley's perspective now, what can you do as the head coach to make this team better, to make improvements across the board? And if that means upgrading your punter, why would you not do that? It's an opportunity for Lincoln Riley to make the punter position maybe a little better, or at least put some competition in there so Reeves Munshaw punts the ball better in 2021. I doubt that Plaster's going to challenge Burkich for place kicks, honestly. Burkich is pretty great. He's kind of the man there. Missed a couple last year, but he's not about to lose his job, right? So maybe Burkich takes a seat on kickoffs, kind of give his leg a rest, right? Maybe there's something systemic there when you kick off and do field goals. Your leg gets a little tired. Maybe that's why you missed some field goals last year. I don't know. But that's what Plaster did at Arizona State his freshman year. He had 30 kickoffs and 6 touchbacks. My guess is most likely he's going to get a shot at the punter position, and here's why. Let's remember what a punter is at Oklahoma, okay? You don't get a lot of opportunities to punt the football at Oklahoma. A couple of years ago, Munshaw only punted the ball 38 times, while other guys in the Big 12 were kicking it 50, 60, and plus, right, times in the season. And he only kicked it 38, and he did pretty good. He averaged 42 yards a kick as a freshman or as a first-year starter. But last year, Munshaw had 38 punts as well, and he only averaged 39. So kind of went backwards a little bit. If you punt at OU, this is Lincoln Riley's thinking here. If you punt at OU, you come on when on the times when our team doesn't score a touchdown, I'm going to bring you in and I'm going to ask you to flip the field, right? You better not leave your defense out there with a short field. And that happened a handful of times last year. Okay, Ryan, let's get back into some of the position battles. We did most of the defense last segment. Let's switch over to offense. Sure sounds like Mario Williams is lining himself up for some playing time, right? I mean, we mentioned Shane Witter as one of the fastest guys on the team. Sounds like Mario Williams might fit into that category as well.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And I think that just by nature of what the receiver production was last year, I think you're going to see anyone and everyone who's flashed at all in spring and fall camp before the season starts. I think you're going to see him in the first couple of games because Lincoln Riley, what did he lead off with this season, this spring, is basically laying down a challenge to the wide receivers that they underachieved last year. They had drops in key moments, leading the country in drop touchdowns, the like that. So I think anyone and everyone who's kind of shown the ability that maybe they can be a game breaker, I truly believe Lincoln Riley, Dennis Simmons, Cale Gundy, they're going to toss those guys out there and say, who is going to hang on to the ball in those key moments early on? Because that's who you're going to discover and roll with. It worked out last year with Marvin Mims coming in as a true freshman, just being so businesslike and then going off and leading the team in receiving. So I think that Mario Williams, he'll get his shot if he's earned it on the practice field. And John, like you said, by the sound of it, there are a lot of people impressed with his twitch and his ability to make some room for himself and be a burner in tight spaces over the middle of the field.
You know what else jumps out at me about Mario Williams is Dennis Simmons comes out on the Zoom last week. I think it was last week. Again, they're starting to run together. We get 2 a week. We got Spencer Rattler and Lincoln Riley tomorrow, so be with us for that one, allsooners.com. But we talked to Dennis Simmons, and what was one of the things that Dennis Simmons said? He's a little like Baker Mayfield. We're all like, do what now? He's a little like Baker Mayfield. He gravitates guys to him. He's got this electricity and this energy about him when he's out there at practice. People want to be around him. He brings energy to his teammates. He gets excited. So, a lot of guys get excited at practice, but for a wide receivers coach to throw out that one of his freshman wide receivers is a little bit like Baker Mayfield, that's about as high a compliment as you can get. Now, were you surprised, Ryan, when we got to talk to basically a guy coming off a major injury and another guy coming off suspension in Jaden Hazelwood and Trajan Bridges? I thought that was outstanding. And both guys were really, really very forthcoming about their own personal situations, but they were also forthcoming about what you just mentioned, which is Lincoln Riley kicking off the spring by calling out the whole receiver room. I thought both guys were kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, for sure. And I really feel like the entire wide receiver room, everyone that we've kind of talked about, has handled that in stride. And I think that they would tell you the exact same thing. They did tell us the exact same thing, John, that they believe they have not played up to their potential, whether it be Marvin Mims, a guy that in his first year basically came out and said, if I just replicate what I did last year, then we're going backwards, not forwards. You've got Hazelwood and Bridges, who came in alongside Theo Weiss as the highly touted trio that were supposed to, it's the on paper, the best wide receiver class that Oklahoma's ever signed. They haven't quite played up to that yet, albeit, John, they had 1 year playing behind CeeDee Lamb, and then last year, 2/3 of those guys missed a majority of the year with stuff. So I think that they're motivated themselves. I'm not sure it would have taken Lincoln Riley publicly saying anything for those guys to feel that pressure on themselves, because that's what they believe, John. They believe that they are that good and that they're ready to show the college football world that they should be validated in that belief. So I've been very impressed with all of the wide receivers, especially Hazelwood and Bridges, just like you said, with how frank they were and how they believe that they can go out there and the best is yet to come from them.
All right, now let's talk about the position battle that everybody wants to talk about, and that's quarterback, where Caleb Williams is going to compete. I'm kidding. No, Caleb Williams is going to compete this spring. He's going to get a lot of snaps, but Spencer Rattler's not losing that job. I think Caleb is very special. I think he is a generational type talent, but he's got a guy in his way right now that's really good in Spencer Rattler. So don't look for Caleb to steal snaps. I'm not being an idiot. I'm just kidding around. But here's the question. Starting with this spring, when Caleb has enrolled as a true freshman, he's trying to get his kind of feel for college football. Here's the question. What is Lincoln Riley's plan for Caleb Williams, knowing full well that if Spencer Rattler, we talked to, you can catch this on the website, allsooners.com, talked to Jim Mora. He said Spencer Rattler absolutely could be the next number 1 pick in the NFL draft next year, right? So if Rattler comes out, maybe he has a great season, leads them to a championship of some kind, maybe wins the Heisman, maybe goes to New York as a finalist, maybe becomes a top 5 pick or at least projects as a top 5 pick. If he leaves, what is Lincoln Riley's plan in 2021 right now for Caleb Williams? How much do you feed him? How much do you give him? How much do you get him out there? Knowing, again, that Spencer Rattler needs a lot of work, still needs to grow, but he doesn't need a whole lot of work. It's not like there's a position battle going on. Ryan, what's your sense on how he's going to treat Caleb Williams this year?
Well, John, I honestly think it depends on how this team plays complementary football together. That was the problem last season. You couldn't get a backup quarterback into the game because the offense would shoot out and it'd be 21-0, and then they'd sputter, and then the defense would start to, allow some teams to get back into the game. Then all of a sudden, you can't even mentally think of, okay, how many snaps do we want to get this guy, that guy, who do you want to bring along? So if the Sooners can take that step forward this year and really start to become like what Alabama and Clemson are when they play the lower tier teams in their conference, those games are done at halftime, John, and the whole fourth quarter is time to develop those younger guys, or for those competitions along the position groups when you've got that much depth to come along. So I think it'll depend on that. And then I think if you're Lincoln Riley, you're absolutely trying to get Caleb Williams into as many fourth quarters as possible, providing that you're up there. Because if you're to that point, I'm not sure what else Spencer Rattler is going to gain. And you'll want to see that maturation process, because we saw the road bumps that happened with Rattler last year. OU was able to overcome most of them, but if you can get Williams some reps this year, hopefully that's kind of out of the way in case he's your guy next year. Spencer Rattler's into the NFL.
Ryan, the next time we podcast, we're going to be previewing the spring game, which is literally the least interesting thing about spring football practice. I've been doing this for 17 years now, covering OU springs. It's the spring game is the least interesting thing. It is. It's kind of like it's kind of a game, which is cool, which is, it's fine. But we always end up reading too much into what we think we see, right? And not just we, but fans and observers and outsiders and everybody watches the spring game and says, "Oh my God, did you see that?" And over the years, it's been funny. They've come up with ways to really overcomplicate the spring game. The offense versus defense one year, and then next year it's red versus white, and some guys are wearing blue for obvious reasons. Remember that one time, Ryan, when Bob Stoops and Brent Venables devised this crazy, I think it was Venables, this crazy scoring system that awarded the offense for first downs and the defense for stops and turnovers, and the final score was like 94-80 or some stupid thing, which, if you think about it, now that's just a regular college football score. But no, it's sometimes it's hard to follow format-wise, the spring game. Nobody cares who wins, right? So you just have to kind of, in my opinion, pick a couple of positions that you want to watch, or pick a handful of players and just try to see what you can see. Look what a guy does in a one-on-one situation. See how he competes. That's always the best way to watch a spring game, Ryan. It seems like every year there used to be some running back who would carry the football like 35 times for 82 yards, right? And everybody would be like, wow, watch out for him next year. And, of course, Ryan, the guy never got on the field.
Yeah, you got to look out for stuff like that. If your running back is racking up 35 carries, I have to wonder, are the coaches just trying to protect somebody else? Like, who are you sacrificing out? But, yeah, the positions I'll be looking at is, thankfully, John, it feels like for the first time in a while, you feel confident that watching the offensive line and defensive line go at it, you're going to be able to get a pretty good indication of who is playing well, who isn't, because both of those units should be amongst the best in the country. And then obviously, if Caleb Williams is everything that's advertised, I have faith that he can come in and run the offense well enough in this spring game setting to kind of get a vibe on the wide receivers as well. I know we just talked about them, but kind of see who are those guys that are making the plays in the open field now that we know that back-end secondary has that top-end length and speed that Alex Grinch and Roy Manning want so very badly. So the line of scrimmage, the trenches on both sides, and then that wide receiver room, how that's all shaping up. That's definitely who I've got my eyes on, and I feel like, at least as far as a spring game setting goes, maybe it's a little less fool's gold if you've got that kind of competition at those positions.
Now, next week, we're also going to have a bunch more recruiting for you guys, as Ryan, as I said earlier, is spending the weekend in Dallas. Ryan, can't wait to see what you bring back, man, as we get closer and closer to the end of this damn COVID dead period.
Yeah, same. I'm just happy, John, I just have a ton of fun getting out there and just being able to get on a football field and see the next generation recruits come in and just see everyone battling in these one-on-one scenarios. So it sure beats the heck out of being cooped up indoors and trying to pilfer through YouTube highlights and splitting hairs over all that stuff. I trust these two eyes right here a little bit better when I can see things in person and really get a gauge for myself. So I'm excited. Get a little bit of both too. Some 7-on-7 action on Saturday, some actual old school camp stuff on Sunday. Should be a fun, fruitful weekend in Dallas.
My advice from the two that I've covered so far, bring rain gear and bring sunblock. Listen to the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or if you've got Amazon, just ask your Amazon-enabled device, Alexa, play the SI Sooners podcast. She'll do it. It's cool. Go to our website, allsooners.com, click on the player. That's always right there on the front page. Listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, or just watch the video version on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.